Chapter 7, Lesson 5, Drawing 3D Figures. So the essential question for this chapter is, how does geometry help us describe real-world objects? And we've talked a lot about this in class with the architecture and kind of that whole piece of taking a 3D object, and then making it 2D and using our words to describe it. Today specifically, we're going to learn to draw the top, side, and front views of a three-dimensional figure. And then we're going to learn to draw the corner view of a three-dimensional figure given the figure's top, front, and sides. So we've got to have this corner view. We're going to use what's called isometric dot paper. And so it's a series of dots. It's kind of funky. And it takes a little bit to get used to drawing, okay? And then we're going to draw the top, side, and front views of that 3D figure. So here's our first problem, and it says, draw a top, a side, and a front view of the figure at the right. So I'm going to start by making sure I label all of my drawings. So I've got top, front, and side. So if I were to look straight down on top and have my eyes right there, what would I see? Well, I would see a triangle. And so that's what I would draw for my top view. Now, if I were to look at the front here, they show me my front, I'm looking just at that shape. That's all I would see. So in that case, if I turned it so it faced me, or I walked around to that edge, I would see a rectangle, possibly a square, but I can't tell, but definitely a rectangle. Then the same thing applies for that side view. So if I turned that object and I spun it and I looked at the side, I would see a rectangle. So that's how I draw my top, front, and side views. So the same thing, I want you to draw a top, a side, and a front view of the figure that's listed. So using this cone, what would it look like if I looked down on it and compressed it all flat and looking straight down? If I drew it from the front and if I drew it from the side. So pause your podcast and try that right now. So I have a top, a side, and a front. So if I were to look straight down on the top of this object, I would see it kind of collapse down, and I would actually see the base shape, which is a circle. So I would see that circle figure. From the side, well, let's start from the front. From the front, I would see something like this. So like I was looking at it straight from the front. And well, in 3D, they draw this curve shape. If I actually held the object, think about what like a party hat looks like, I wouldn't see that curve. I would actually just see a triangle. And same thing, if I turned it to the side, I would still see that same triangle. And we'll pull out the 3D shapes tomorrow in class and look at that more specifically, because it is kind of tricky to imagine what that would look like from the top, front, and side. Okay, again, try the same thing. Draw a top, side, and front view of this video console, so this DVD player maybe potentially. What does it look like if I draw it straight from the top, from a side, and from the front? So pause it and try to figure out that drawing on your own. Okay, by now you should have completed your drawings. So if I'm looking at the top down, I'm going to see this rectangular object, okay? Because that bottom extra piece there is going to collapse down underneath it. Now from the side, I'm going to see the initial portion of that rectangle, and then it looks like it's got a little bit of an edge that it sits on. So that's about what I would see on the side. And the last one is the front view. So if I look at it from the front view, it's going to look much the same. The front has a little bit longer rectangle, and again, I'm going to see that extra piece in there, okay? This next section gets to be a little bit trickier. A lot of people get the top, front, and side views, but to draw a three-dimensional figure, is a little harder. So here it says draw the corner view of a three-dimensional figure whose top, side, and front views are shown. So when we start, we're going to always start with kind of looking at the top, the front, and the side. So I like to start, when I'm doing this, I've got to look at a corner. So I usually start with the top, okay? So when I'm looking straight down, I know that I'm going to have, my top says that I see just 3 across the top. So I've taken this dot paper and I've drawn what looks like the side view. So see how I've kind of stretched it out, and I'm showing you the side view, and it's a 3 on the bottom and 1 up in the middle. So I've done that. Now, if I look at the top, I can only see 3 long, which means these are only 3 wide, or are only 1 wide. So what I can do is I can draw these back, and I see that I only have 1 wide. And this is where it gets tricky because we're not used to drawing using this dot paper. And that's what I would get. So imagine how in the front it would compress together, so I would only see the red, so it all collapsed together. So this is what I'd see, and that's what I would see, which is why it kind of condenses. Then on my side view, that's what I drew initially. So I see 1, 2, 3, and 4 of that side view. And then on the top, when it were to condense down onto the top, that I'm doing in yellow, and see how I would see this piece, and then that piece. So a little bit trickier, kind of have to create it in your head and figure out what it looks like and then draw it onto the dot paper. This is one of the hardest tasks we will have, so I want you to pause the podcast, see what you can get done. So here's our views, and now we've got to try drawing it out. We'll continue working on this in class in the next couple days. So it says draw a corner view of a three-dimensional figure. So I've got my top, my side, and my front. And I kind of indicated to you that I think it's a little bit easier if we start with our side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by drawing my side. And it's weird because of how these blocks work. So if here is my side, here's my first block. So that's the block right there. Then my second block. My next one's going to be too high. So that's right here. And then I have another set of blocks that are too high. So see how I've made my side view right there. Now the next thing that I want to do is I want to kind of add my front view. And so I see that it must be 2 deep. So I have 1 deep, that would be 1 block. And then I go another, that would be 2 blocks. And I can extend all of these that I started with on my side out that far, because on the top I see that if it condenses down, it all goes down that far. So then I can keep going. And it gets weird because you're not necessarily used to drawing like that. So there's what I see. So see how from the front, if I were to condense the front, so I'll do that in yellow, I would see this one, and then the front here, and the front here. If I were to look from the side, that's right here, and that's where I would see a single, and then 2, 2, like that. And then the last view that I would have is from the top, and that's where I have a 4 by 2. So I would see 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you got to kind of think about what that view looks like. And again, we'll continue working. I find the easiest tends to be to start with that side view and then expand it out from there.